मुख्य वक्ता डॉक्टर आर माशेलकर, जाने माने वैज्ञानिक हमारे साथ हैं। उनका भी सम्मान सत्कार भारतीय छात्र संसद के मंच से।
Yesterday, I just spoke for 3 minutes and made just 3 points for taking India forward and getting it the right place in the Committee of Nations. Today, the young man just whispered into my ears 15 minutes. So I'll speak for 15 minutes, maybe somewhat less. I made 3 points yesterday. Do you remember what are those 3 points? Innovative India, One India, My India. And I said every morning we should get up and say My India at least 3 times. How many of you this morning got up and said My India? I can see the hands. Maybe we can make up for it. My India. That is where we begin. I talked about Innovative India. The Honorable Speaker just now said that finally the winners are those who do things differently. Doing things differently is innovation. That is Innovative India, right? I was looking at today's Times of India and I saw Innovative India there, but not the innovation that I like. You know what was that innovation? It says, Nakshals plant bomb in slain Jawan's belly. This is something new. What they did was actually to take what is called as an improvised explosive device and planted it in a dead CRPF personnel with a gelatin stick, a detonator, and a battery. Of course, the experiment did not succeed because they wanted to create a damage in a hospital by blowing up everyone. That is not the innovation that we are talking about. I have seen innovation being done differently when we had a human bomb kill Rajiv Gandhi. That is not the innovation that humanity is looking for. I saw innovation when a plane was used as a missile to bring down the World Trade Center, creating a different world altogether. That is not the innovation that we are looking for. That destroys peace. I think the innovation that we are looking for is one that creates peace, harmony, equity, equality, and a better world. And that is the topic of the day. In fact, I don't think we have to go very far. Frankly, we are sitting in the Vivekananda Sabha Mandap. This great personality about whom Professor Karad spoke so eloquently yesterday. On my right is Gautam Buddha. On my left is Mahatma Gandhi. These 3 great sons of India. I think all that the world needs today are the teachings of these 3 great sons of India, Vivekananda, Gautam Buddha, and Mahatma Gandhi. You find, for example, in the case of Gautam Buddha, that he brought the transformative thinking in terms of love, compassion, peace, and solace. And you must be aware of the Noble Eightfold Paths that he talked about. You remember what they were? They have a right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effect, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I think we should go back to those teachings. Right view, for example. You know, I keep on learning as I grow old. And I learn from everyone. I learn from you, for example. I learn from my granddaughter. Let me recollect what happened a couple of years ago when she was just 4. Ishwari is her name. I was reading a newspaper in the morning, and she used to fool around while I was reading. She was learning alphabets. So I thought I will test her out for alphabets. So I took a piece of paper and started writing alphabets. I wrote A. She was sitting here. I said, "What is this?" She said, A. I wrote D. "What is this?" She said, D. Then I wrote Z. I said, "What is this?" She said, N. I said, "No, beta, it is Z." She said, "No, Abba, it is N." And you know something? Both of us were right. Because from where I was looking at, it was Z. From where she was looking at, it was N. That little girl taught me something. Both of you can be seemingly right. It all depends upon where you look from. That is what Gautam Buddha has said, the view. So if you go back to the topic of the day, when we talk about peace and conflict, why conflict arises? Because we are not simply able to see the way the other sees it. Naxalites, for example, when the problem arose, it has grown to a very grievous proportion now, as we can quite clearly see here. But when it began, where did it begin, basically? It was all this issue about our being able to look at it from their perspective, those tribals who were deprived, and so on and so forth. I also believe, therefore, that coming back to the teachings of Vivekananda, if you go back 11 September 1893, I think that was a great day in the Indian history when Vivekananda spoke in Chicago, in that Hall of Columbus. And he showed how he was a living embodiment of universality and harmony. And just now what was mentioned, the diversity in university and the universality and universality in the diversity is what he had actually talked about. And he talked about at that time about a universal religion. And he said it must be one, and I'm quoting him, which has no location in place and time, which will be infinite like the God. And he had said, and I quote him again, "I will go to mosque of Muhammadan. I shall kneel before the crucifix. I shall sit before the Buddha. I shall sit down in meditation with the Hindu." Basically what he was talking about is about a mind that is open. You know, parachute works best when it is open. Mind is also like that when it's open. So when we talk about peace and when we talk about conflict, it's all about having an open mind. If we go back, I talked about Vivekananda, but if you go back to Gautam Buddha's teachings, for example, he talked about good life. And he said, good life is attainment of peace. Shanti, which is a characteristic of nirvana or transcendental reality. And he also said that the process of creating a good life is really harmonious living with one's fellow beings. And this word harmony is extremely critical, by the way, around the world. And it is this disharmony which creates the kind of headlines that you see in the newspapers today. Social disharmony can come because of a variety of reasons. I was in China, everybody is singing praises of China. Yesterday you heard, today you heard. I was in China in the month of May last year to look at what is called as inclusive innovation. It was a mission. And it is very interesting. China is very worried about social disharmony. Why? Because as economic growth has taken place, the rich have become richer, the poor have become poorer. The top 10% have 34.6% of the share of the economy, and the bottom 10% have just 2.4%. That is the difference. Is India very different? No. That is the difference that is coming up. Now, when you have such social disharmony, what can you do to bring harmony? Well, you would say bring income equality, but income equality will take a long time. It will take a generation. Can you do that? And that's why what I said yesterday, you create access equality. Can you create access equality despite income inequality? Of course you can. You know, on the other day I was returning from Bombay to Pune. My car just stopped at a traffic light. I saw two people waiting for the traffic signal to change so that green lights will come and they will cross. You know where those two people? One was a very rich lady, tall, very graceful, with a lipstick and a goggle, ultra rich. And there was a girl from a slum, just 6 or 7 year old perhaps. Nothing common between them, huge income inequality. And yet there was access equality. You know what was that? Both of them were on their mobiles. Now how did it happen? It happened because that handset was just $25, which was created by Nokia and Ericsson. Okay? But even if it was $25, would she have afforded it if the phone calls were 10 cents per minute, like in America? No, because 200 cents per day is perhaps her father's income. That is $2 per day. If it is 10 cents per minute, 20-minute call, and it would be over. But it is a fraction of a cent per minute in India. And how was that done? Through innovation. It is called a business process innovation, which was done by our sort of Indian companies. You remember Dhirubhai Ambani saying phone call at the cost of a postcard? And it happened. Airtel did that and so on. So it was a combination of these two. I think the central point I'm trying to make is that when I talk about innovative India, we want to create that India where you have, despite income inequality, access equality, like I talked about my own education yesterday, how I got access in health, in every walk of life, how we can innovate so that the poorest of the poor enjoy the sort of similar benefits, at least the functional value would be exactly the same. That is called inclusive innovation. The last point I'd like to make before I close and finish my 15 minutes is the following. I think we have to relook at the definition of peace. What is peace? If you go to Wikipedia, you will find the definition of peace, in which you will find that it comes from the Latin word pax, which means freedom for civil disorder, from civil disorder. Now, if you see Nobel Peace Prizes, you will find that the conventional peace, which relates to conventional conflict, has gone to Martin Luther King in 1964 and Mother Teresa in 79. Yesterday we heard the Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi in 91 and Nelson Mandela and so on and so forth, Kofi Annan. But suddenly you find it has gone to Muhammad Yunus in 2001. Why? Because he did microfinancing, bringing so many women out of poverty by a very innovative financing model which gave them livelihood. You suddenly find that in 2007, it went to the International Panel on Climate Change. Why? Because climate change will destroy our planet. In fact, I remember the president of Royal Society, I was chairing the Blackett Memorial Lecture, and it was a chilling lecture, and he said 21st century, the last century. Why he was saying that? Because of climate change, the way the changes are going to take place. And therefore, peace was interpreted as something where we have a planet which will sustain forever. So my friends, peace has to be interpreted in a completely different way. Today, the interpretation of Nobel Prize actually tells you what it means. Just as somebody has said, poverty is the biggest the polluter. Poverty is the greatest destroyer of peace, and conflict arises as a result of that. So I think it's the issue of people, planet, and prosperity for not some, but prosperity for all. I think that is the broader meaning that we have to basically take in order to avoid this conflict. I personally believe that India is absolutely in the right place. India's heart is in the right place. India has innovation, India has passion, but most importantly, India has compassion in the heart. Innovation, compassion, and passion, and it is on that basis that India will lead. Thank you very much.